Before Ohio had stadiums and skylines, it had silence, captured in the grain of a photograph. These are the earliest echoes of a state in the making, from flooded towns to funeral processions, from dusty schools to baseball's first swing. Each image tells a truth no textbook ever dared to whisper.
Cleveland City Square, 1900. Streetcars hum, hats tilt, and commerce dances in every direction. Cleveland's public square was already bursting with life at the turn of the century. The towering Soldiers and Sailors Monument anchored the chaos with solemn pride. This was more than a square, it was the city's open heart, beating fast with ambition. Euclid Avenue, Cleveland, 1900. Before the roar of engines and the blur of neon lights, Euclid Avenue whispered elegance. Lined with trees and opulent mansions, this was Cleveland's Millionaire's Row, a silent parade of wealth and quiet ambition. In this stillness, you can almost hear the echo of carriage wheels on cobblestone and lives lived in grandeur. Street Parade, St. Mary's, 1899. Flags waved, boots marched, and windows filled with curious eyes. This 1899 street view from St. Mary's captures a small town in motion, prideful, festive, and woven tightly together. The muddy road may have faded, but the spirit in this photo still walks beside us, carrying Ohio's story one block at a time. Main Street, Piqua, 1899. You can almost hear the horseshoes clatter and the distant ring of a trolley bell. Piqua's Main Street was alive with movement and promise in 1899. Painted signs, telephone wires, and steady footsteps filled the frame. Here, progress wasn't just coming, it was already carving its path through brick, rail, and ambition.
Main Street, Dalton, 1899. Nothing urgent here. Just quiet commerce and a slow rhythm you could set a watch to. On the south side of Main Street, locals linger in front of shop windows, their boots tracing lines no map would ever show. Dalton, in 1899, wasn't chasing the future, it was busy living the moment. Flooded streets, Zanesville, 1898. The river didn't knock, it barged in. In 1898, Zanesville's quiet streets became mirrors of panic and survival. Telegraph poles stood helpless in rising water, and station walls reflected skies heavy with fear. This wasn't just a flood. It was a moment when Ohioans remembered how quickly nature can erase the work of men. Memorial Arch, Akron, 1898. Raised for Memorial Day, this grand arch once crowned South Howard Street with honor and silence. Built in 1898, it paid tribute to fallen Civil War soldiers and soon to those lost in the Spanish-American War. Beneath its Latin motto, Akron walked with grief, pride, and the quiet weight of remembrance. Ashtabula Harbor, 1895. Where wooden masts pierced the sky and coal whispered across the waves, Ashtabula Harbor stood as Ohio's gateway to the world. By 1895, this port moved iron and ambition from the Great Lakes to the steel cities beyond. It was the pulse of industry at full sail.
Broad Street, Elyria, 1895. The awnings sway, the signs stand proud, and the dirt road curls forward like a timeline. Illyria's Broad Street, captured in 1895, feels both ordinary and sacred. Every storefront has a story, every window a witness. Nothing here begs attention, yet everything pulls you in, quietly certain of its place in history. Belleville, Ohio, 1894. From atop Switzer's Hill, the village spills out like a quiet thought across the valley. Chimneys rest, fields breathe, and wooden rooftops lean gently into the land. Belleville in 1894 wasn't rushing anywhere, it was simply existing, stitched into the hills like it had always belonged there. A portrait of stillness perfectly paused. Electric streetcar, Toledo, 1893. A hum of current replaced the clip-clop of hooves. Car 312 waits beneath a web of wires, its silhouette cutting through the quiet of a growing Toledo. This wasn't science fiction, it was Monday morning. The streetcar era had arrived, and with it, a faster pulse in the heart of Ohio. Ohio State's first football team, 1890. No helmets, no roaring crowds, just grit, pride, and striped socks. This was the very first Ohio State football team, posing before their very first game in 1890. They weren't legends yet, but the fire had started. In this photo, you're witnessing the quiet beginning of one of college football's greatest dynasties. Arcade Building, Springfield, 1889. It stretched like a promise, 4 stories of brick, bustle, and dreams. The arcade building wasn't just architecture, it was Springfield's beating commercial core. With shops below and the elegant arcade hotel above, this corner of High and Market buzzed with carriages, cash registers, and confidence. This was where Ohioans met progress face to face. Wheeling Avenue, Cambridge, 1886. The road doesn't just stretch forward, it remembers. Lined with storefronts and leaning trees, Wheeling Avenue captured a town mid-sentence. Horses rest in the shade, boots press dust into memory, and a sign reading "Leather Store" swings in the breeze. It's a place between eras where nothing feels rushed, but everything is becoming. Train collision, B&O Railroad, 1886. Iron met iron at full speed. Engines tangled like beasts in mid-charge. This 1886 wreck on the Baltimore and Ohio line didn't just bend steel, it froze time. Onlookers stand like punctuation marks beside the chaos, stunned by the silence that follows disaster. Even the strongest tracks can't always hold direction. Toledo Central High School, 1880. Turrets, towers, and timbered dreams. This wasn't just a school, it was a fortress of thought rising above the banks of the Miami and Erie Canal. Students once crossed muddy roads to sit under this roof and reshape their futures. In the silence of this photo, ambition still lingers in the bricks.
Columbus State Hospital, 1880. A fortress of care or confinement rises from the treetops like a castle for forgotten minds. Columbus State Hospital sprawled across acres, a maze of red brick and hushed corridors. Built with symmetry, but filled with chaos, it reflects a time when architecture tried to contain what no one fully understood. Hall Block, Toledo, 1878. Before it vanished in flames, the Hall Block towered like a crown on St. Clair Street. With rigid windows and bold symmetry, it declared that Toledo was no longer frontier, it was foundation. In this photo, the sky glows faintly behind its outline, as if history itself had paused to admire the structure. Cincinnati Library, 1874. It looked like a cathedral made of paper and dreams. In 1874, the Cincinnati General Library was a monument to knowledge, with walls that breathed ideas. A lone figure scales the ironwork, not to worship, but to read. This wasn't just a library, it was Ohio's mind, built in wood, iron, and wonder. Mineral Springs Resort, Adams County, 1870. Tucked into the hills of West Union, this tranquil retreat promised healing through water and silence. Built in 1867, the Mineral Springs Resort drew weary souls from cities to rest beneath tall trees and sip mineral elixirs. Before it burned in 1923, it offered cabins, calm, and whispered hope in every drop.
Cleveland Forest Cities, 1869. 11 men in matching uniforms, frozen forever in sepia tone.
This is Cleveland's first professional baseball team, the Forest Cities of 1869. With crossed arms, wooden bats, and proud expressions, they weren't just players. They were pioneers of a national obsession still growing, one inning, one generation, one photograph at a time. Geauga County Fire, 1868. All that remained was a shell. The 1868 fire scorched Main Street in Chardon, Ohio, leaving the old Geauga County Courthouse silhouetted against the rubble. Charred beams, toppled fences, and a haunting stillness. This wasn't simply a fire, it was a reset, a brutal clearing before the next chapter could rise. Lincoln's funeral procession, Columbus, 1865. A nation in mourning lined the streets as Abraham Lincoln's casket passed through Columbus. Silent crowds filled every inch of the city's heart. Horse-drawn carriages rolled slowly toward the Capitol, but time itself seemed to halt. Every soul watching, aching, remembering the man who'd held a fractured Union together. Superior Avenue, Cleveland, 1864. A Great Lakes schooner rests in the foreground, but it's the street behind that carries the drama. Superior Avenue climbs the hill like a promise, blanked by warehouses and ambition. The sails are still, the bricks are stern, and Cleveland, half maritime, half metropolis, finds its voice somewhere between waterline and smokestack. The first Union Station, Columbus, 1864. Before highways and airports, this wooden giant pulsed with steam and ambition. Columbus Union Station wasn't just a stop, it was Ohio's beating heart. Built for dreams on rails, it linked lives, towns, and stories across the state. In 1864, progress sounded like a whistle echoing across muddy streets. Election Day, Centerburg, 1863. Boots in dust, voices in motion. On East Main Street, an entire town leans toward the future with ballot in hand. Horses wait, men gather in loose lines, half watching, half debating. The Central House watches quietly from behind the mall, an old building with newer decisions echoing through its wooden frame. Martinsburg, West Virginia, Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Shops, 1858. Steam, sweat, and steel defined this day at the Martinsburg shops. Dozens of workers stand proudly beside massive locomotives and coal tenders, the heartbeat of America's first chartered railroad. These were more than trains. They were lifelines, forging paths westward and stitching a young nation together, rail by determined rail. Cleveland, Ohio, Public Square, 1857. A moment frozen in time. This may be the oldest surviving photograph of Cleveland's public square. Horse-drawn carriages, tree-lined streets, and tall brick buildings line a peaceful stretch of early American city life, long before cars or electricity. It's a quiet window into a rapidly changing nation. Downtown Columbus, Ohio, 1857. Seen from the State House cupola, this early aerial photograph reveals a growing city in motion. Horse-drawn buggies wade along 3rd Street, while tree-lined roads and tidy brick homes stretch eastward. In the distance, the State Street School stands, marking a quiet milestone in Columbus's educational and urban development. Antioch College, Yellow Springs, 1853. Rising from Ohio's fields like a cathedral of thought, Antioch College was more than bricks, it was a declaration. Founded in 1852 with Horace Mann at the helm, it welcomed men and women alike in its first class. This photo captures not just a building, but the quiet revolution of education. Union Block, Chillicothe, 1852. No glamour, just grit, timber, and men chasing permanence. This rare glimpse of Chillicothe in 1852 shows the Union Block rising brick by brick. Dust clings to the future as horses wait and workers hammer. It's not a finished building, it's a frozen moment of ambition, captured before the paint even dried. Oxford, Ohio, 1851. Captured in the heart of town, this daguerreotype frames the quiet strength of Oxford's early days. Dirt roads cradle horse-drawn wagons, while wooden storefronts and brick buildings line the streets with quiet dignity. Signs like jeweler hinted daily life, ambition, and community pride in this young Ohio town.
Daguerreotype view of Cincinnati, the oldest known panorama of an American city, 1848. Before there were pixels, prints, or postcards, there was silver and light. In 1848, two men stood across the Ohio River with a vision no one else had, to capture the soul of a rising American city in one sweeping moment. Using a daguerreotype camera, state-of-the-art for its time, Charles Fontaine and William Porter gave us what we now know as the oldest surviving panoramic photograph of an American city. Their subject? Cincinnati, then a city of steamboats, spires, smokestacks, and ambition. This panorama is more than a photograph. It's a portal. It captures Cincinnati just as it was pivoting from rivertown to regional power. Every plank, every rooftop, every puff of smoke is a frozen heartbeat from a time before electricity, before highways, before noise drowned out stillness. Fontaine and Porter didn't just document a place, they preserved a mood, a temperature, a truth. And now, more than 175 years later, we don't just see it, we feel it. Toledo, Ohio, 1841. Framed by leafless trees, this lone schoolhouse stands as a quiet sentinel of early education. The one-room structure once echoed with the voices of children learning by lamplight. In its stillness, the photo whispers of chalk dust, wooden desks, and the hope of a growing frontier town. They built homes before hope had walls. They stood firm when the water rose. They dreamed beneath oil lamps and paved roads with bare hands. In every shadow of these photos, there's a heartbeat. Ohio wasn't just born, it was carved, framed, and remembered. And now, you've seen how.